She trying to make me work. That's what she's trying to do. I got it. You get pushed today.
Were you gonna push me around?
Yeah, you pushed today. I don't know what you gotta work with this fight. That's
A target?
Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
I lost a lot of weight, guys. I'm cutting down. I got slim. I did.
Wait, once you get through money, just go back. Look at it now.
So, Coach Calvin, we greatly appreciate it. Who? Me? He said he needed a sweat.
Need a sweat. I gotta make him look like $1 million. For real.
Nobody had Chrissy and Rock quietly returning to boxing training with her family on their internet bingo card. And that's exactly why this shook the timeline. While critics were busy writing her off in comment sections like unpaid judges on a talent show, Chrisean popped back up in the gym, gloves on, focus tight, and energy different. No dramatic announcement, no press tour, just action. That alone made the internet uncomfortable. When chaos goes quiet and discipline shows up, people don't know how to react. And then came the detail that flipped the whole narrative. She didn't walk into training alone. She brought her sister Tessa Jr., turning what people expected to be a messy comeback into something that looked suspiciously like a plan. Suddenly, this wasn't just boxing content. It felt like a message wrapped in sweat and silence. The kind of move that makes blogs scramble and fans start arguing before the clip even finishes loading. Social media treated it like a leaked scene from a documentary nobody was supposed to see yet. Supporters called it growth. Critics called it cap, and neutral viewers grabbed popcorn like this was episode 1 of a new season, because when someone the internet loves to underestimate locks in instead of lashing out. It disrupts the storyline, and the internet hates when the script changes without permission. This wasn't just a return to training. It was a shift, and once people realized that the reactions went nuclear. The reason this moment hit so hard is because it didn't line up with the version of Chrisean Rock the internet had already decided to believe. For weeks, even months, the dominant narrative painted her as distracted, unstable, and permanently tangled in drama with no off switch. People spoke about her like boxing was a phase she already fumbled, a storyline that expired the moment chaos took over again. So when footage surfaced of her back in training, gloves on, body moving with intent, it felt less like an update and more like a contradiction. The internet hates being contradicted, especially when it already wrote the ending. This return wasn't loud or polished, and that's what made it suspicious to people who live off spectacle. There was no overproduced rollout, no motivational captions begging for applause, no dramatic music designed to farm engagement. Instead, it looked raw, focused, and almost private, like something that wasn't meant to be consumed by strangers. That alone made people uncomfortable because the internet prefers chaos it can narrate, not discipline it can't control. When someone known for unpredictability suddenly looks intentional, it forces everyone to reevaluate their assumptions. The boxing angle matters here because it carries baggage. Chrissy didn't just casually flirt with boxing before. She publicly tied herself to it, which means critics never forgot. They treated every setback in her personal life as proof that boxing was a joke, a distraction, or a temporary clout move. Anytime her name trended for drama, people used it as evidence that she wasn't serious enough for the ring. So, this return didn't just reopen a door, it reopened old arguments that never really closed. What escalated the conversation instantly was who she brought with her. Tessa showing up wasn't just a family cameo, it signaled structure. Junior being there turned the moment into something deeper because suddenly this wasn't about proving strangers wrong. It looked like a personal reset. Fans read it as accountability. Critics called it a sympathy shield, and both sides argued like they had insider knowledge. Family involvement always complicates public narratives because it blurs the line between performance and real life. The leak itself spread in that familiar internet way where nobody knows who dropped it first. But everyone claims they saw it. Early clips circulated with captions doing most of the storytelling, framing the moment as either redemption or distraction. Some blogs treated it like breaking news. Others leaned into sarcasm, asking how long this phase would last. The footage became a Rosa test, revealing more about the audience's bias than about Chrissy and herself. Everyone saw what they wanted to see. Initial fan reactions were split, but intense on both sides. Supporters celebrated like this was a comeback montage straight out of a sports movie praising her for choosing discipline over disorder. They framed it as growth, maturity, and proof that she's capable of locking in when it matters. Critics weren't impressed, accusing her of image management and claiming this was just another temporary pivot. The comment sections turned into battlegrounds with each side convinced the other was blind. The sarcasm came fast because the internet never misses a chance to joke before thinking. Memes compared her return to boxing to celebrities announcing surprise rebrands, questioning whether this was consistency or cosplay. Others mocked the seriousness of it all, suggesting the gym was just another backdrop for content. Yet even the jokes revealed something important. Because nobody jokes about things they don't think have impact. If this didn't matter, it wouldn't be funny. What added fuel to the tension was the silence around intent. Chrisean didn't immediately explain herself, didn't spell out goals, and didn't clarify timelines. That vacuum allowed speculation to sprint at full speed. People assumed motives, claiming this was about proving someone wrong, securing a bag, or shifting attention away from drama. Silence online always invites storytelling, and the stories people wrote said more about their expectations than about reality. Timing played a critical role in why this moment felt heavier than usual. The internet had recently been flooded with debates about her personal life, parenting, and stability. That meant emotions were already high, opinions already locked, and patience already gone. Dropping a disciplined, focused image into that environment felt provocative, even if it wasn't intended that way. It challenged the version of her that people had been arguing about nonstop. The boxing community reacted cautiously, which added another layer of intrigue. Some acknowledged the return with optimism. Others stayed quiet, waiting to see consistency before offering respect. Boxing doesn't care about viral moments. It cares about repetition, stamina, and results. That unspoken standard hovered over the conversation, making the return feel like a test rather than a celebration. Everyone knew that one clip wouldn't be enough, but it was enough to start the conversation again. What couldn't be ignored was how deliberate the visuals felt. There was no chaotic energy, no performative aggression, just controlled movement and presence. For someone often accused of being impulsive, that contrast was striking. Critics struggled to reconcile the calm focus on screen with the chaotic image they had built in their heads. Supporters leaned into that contrast as proof of evolution. The involvement of Tessa sparked its own wave of commentary. Fans speculated about sisterly influence, guidance, and emotional grounding. Critics questioned whether family presence was meant to soften public judgment. Either way, her presence shifted the tone from solo grind to shared responsibility. It suggested that this return wasn't happening in isolation, but within its support system. Junior's presence intensified emotions even more because children change how stories are received. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't just about boxing. It was about example, legacy, and perception. Some viewers framed it as inspirational. Others accused the internet of projecting too much meaning onto a moment, but no one ignored it. When kids are involved, neutrality disappears. By the end of this phase, the return to training had already outgrown its original context. It wasn't just about boxing anymore. It was about identity, growth, and whether people are allowed to change in public without being punished for their past. The internet had once again turned a moment into a referendum. And this time, the stakes felt higher because Chrisean wasn't just stepping into a gym. She was stepping back into a narrative that never really let her leave. And that was only the beginning. Because once the internet accepts that something might be serious, it doesn't ease up. It presses harder, watches closer, and waits for the next crack. The real pressure hadn't even started yet. Because now that attention was locked in, Every move that followed would be magnified. Once the internet accepted that this wasn't a random gem appearance, the situation escalated in the most predictable way possible by becoming completely unmanageable. What started as cautious curiosity exploded into full-blown spectacle the moment more eyes got involved. Blogs doubled back for updates. Reaction pages milked every frame. And suddenly Chrissy and Rock's return to boxing training wasn't just news. It was content currency. The narrative stopped asking whether she was serious and started arguing about what this meant, which is where things always get messy. Celebrity reactions didn't even need to be direct to stir the pot, a repost. Here, a fire emoji there, and fans immediately assumed endorsements, alliances, and hidden messages. Someone acknowledging the clip was treated like a koan, while someone ignoring it was accused of shade. That's the internet's favorite game, turning basic engagement into a psychological thriller. Every like became a headline. Every silence became suspicious, and suddenly people who had nothing to do with boxing were dragged into boxing discourse. Boxing discourse memes took the situation to another level because humor is how the internet decides something is officially serious. Clips of Christian training were paired with dramatic captions, sarcastic sound effects, and exaggerated comparisons to famous comeback stories. Some joked that this was her Rocky montage era, while others compared it to celebrities announcing lifestyle changes every 6 months. The jokes were loud, but underneath them was a shared acknowledgement that something had shifted. Nobody. Men's irrelevance. Public outrage followed right on cue, because balance doesn't trend. One side accused critics of never letting Christian grow, arguing that no matter what she does, people are committed to misunderstanding her. The other side rolled their eyes, insisting this was just another phase designed to quiet criticism temporarily. The arguments felt less about boxing and more about who gets grace online and who doesn't. People weren't debating punches or footwork. They were debating character. Pop culture comparisons started flying like confetti. Some said this comeback felt like a celebrity rebrand after a scandal complete with gym footage and family values. Others claimed it had the energy of a reality show redemption arc where the audience is daring the main character to mess it up again. The widest comparisons framed it as a social media experiment testing whether discipline could overpower drama. None of these analogies were fair, but all of them were entertaining, which is all the algorithm really cares about. The presence of Tessa became a recurring talking point as the narrative grew. Fans credited her with grounding energy, claiming her influence could be the difference between consistency and collapse. Critics dismissed that idea, arguing that family support doesn't magically erase bad habits. Both sides spoke with confidence despite knowing almost nothing about what happens off camera. That didn't stop people from building entire theories around sisterly guidance and emotional stability. Junior's involvement amplified emotions even further. Content creators leaned heavily into this angle, framing the training return as a statement about responsibility and example. Supporters called it powerful. Critics called it manipulative, and neutral viewers just acknowledged that it made the story harder to dismiss. Children change how stories land because suddenly jokes feel uncomfortable and criticism feels heavier. The internet struggled with that tension, unsure whether to roast or respect. The boxing world's mixed reaction added another twist. Some insiders cautiously welcomed the return, emphasizing that training is always a positive step. Others remained skeptical, pointing out that boxing isn't about moments. It's about months of consistency. That skepticism was immediately spun by fans into disrespect. While critics treated it as realism, the clash between internet hype and athletic reality became a subplot of its own, highlighting how different those worlds operate. Reaction videos flooded feeds, each promising real talk and unfiltered opinions. These breakdowns didn't provide clarity, but they kept the story alive. Every creator added their own spin, reframing the same footage through different lenses. Viewers picked sides not just on Christian, but on which commentator they trusted. The original moment became a backdrop for endless commentary, proving once again that reactions often matter more than actions online. As attention intensified, expectations followed. People started counting days, watching for updates and monitoring. Consistency, like unpaid managers. Any gap in content was questioned. Any new clip was scrutinized. The return to training stopped being inspiring and started feeling like a test. The internet loves building people up just enough to watch them struggle under the weight of expectation. This situation was no exception. What made this phase especially chaotic was how quickly joy turned into pressure. Supporters wanted proof of dedication. Critics wanted proof of failure, and both demanded it on their timeline. That kind of pressure rarely produces healthy outcomes, but it does produce engagement. The story no longer belonged to Chrisean. It belonged to the audience, waiting to be entertained. By the time the hype reached its peak, the conversation had drifted far from boxing basics. It was about redemption, trust, and whether people can escape the personas built around them. Every update fed the machine, and every lack of update fueled speculation. The internet wasn't just watching anymore. It was hovering, waiting for the next development. And that's when the energy shifted again. Because once the noise gets loud enough, consequences start creeping in. The excitement couldn't stay suspended forever. Reality has a way of catching up to viral moments. And when it does, it forces everyone to confront what all this attention actually costs. The next phase wasn't about reactions anymore. It was about impact. And that's where things got uncomfortable. Stop by. The time the conversation started cooling, the consequences were already setting in, and they weren't as loud as the hype, but they were far more permanent. Viral moments don't usually announce their aftermath. They just leave fingerprints everywhere. Chrissy and Rock's return to boxing training had shifted how people spoke about her, but it also tightened the spotlight in a way that doesn't fade easily. Once the internet decides you might be serious, it stops being forgiving and starts being demanding. Public perception didn't soften, it polarized. Supporters now held her to a higher standard, treating every future move as proof of growth or failure. Critics sharpened their skepticism, watching closely for any sign that the discipline wouldn't last. That's the trap of a redemption. Narrative online. The expectations rise faster than the patience. Suddenly, consistency mattered more than efforts, and silence was no longer neutral. Every gap in visibility felt like a question mark. People were eager to fill the impact on her. Personal relationships was subtle, but undeniable. Being seen training with Tessa reframed their dynamic in the public eye, turning sisterhood into symbolism. Fans projected responsibility on Tessa as if she had been appointed unofficial life coach. That kind of projection is unfair. But once the internet assigns roles, it doesn't check resumes. Every interaction between them became something. People analyzed instead of simply observed. Junior's presence changed the stakes entirely. Conversations shifted from potential to legacy, from effort to example. Supporters framed the training as a message about choosing structure over chaos, while critics accused the internet of romanticizing a single moment. Either way, the narrative attached itself to him, which made the discourse heavier. Once children become part of a viral storyline, the room for joke shrinks and the weight of judgment grows. In the boxing world, the return stopped being a curiosity and became a waiting game. Coaches, fighters, and observers didn't rush to celebrate or dismiss it. They waited for patterns. Boxing respects repetition, not virality. That quiet standard hovered over the entire situation, creating pressure without noise. The gym doesn't care about timelines or trending topics. It cares about what happens when nobody's watching. What lingered most was how this moment altered the way future drama would be received. Any controversy involving Chrisean now carries an added layer of disappointment or defense tied to this return. Supporters will point back to the gym as proof she's trying, while critics will use any misstep as evidence that the effort was temporary. The moment became a reference point, a measuring stick the internet will keep pulling out whenever it suits the argument. The cultural takeaway was hard to ignore. This situation highlighted how little space public figures are given to evolve quietly. Growth has to be visible, documented, and approved by strangers to be considered real. The second it slips out of view, doubt rushes in. That environment doesn't reward patience. It rewards performance. Chrisean stepping back into training challenged that system, but it also trapped her inside it. As the attention drifted elsewhere, the story didn't disappear, it settled. Comments referencing the return started popping up under unrelated posts, reminding everyone that the internet archives everything. Viral moments don't end. They get stored for future arguments. The return to boxing training is now part of her permanent digital footprint, ready to be reused whenever the narrative needs reinforcement. What's unsettling is how quickly the audience moves on once the excitement faded. The same people who demanded updates stopped checking when the next trend arrived. That shift exposed a transactional nature of online support. Attention isn't loyalty. It's curiosity with an expiration date. The pressure remains long after the applause leaves. Applause leaves. Looking forward, this return created more questions than answers. And that's exactly why it matters. Will consistency outlast scrutiny? Will discipline survive distraction? Will the internet allow growth without demanding perfection? Those questions linger without resolution, keeping the story alive in a quieter, more watchful way. In the end, Chrissy and Rock returning to boxing training wasn't just about punches or pads. It was about rewriting a narrative in front of an audience that resists change. Whether this chapter leads to transformation or tension remains to be seen. What's certain is that the internet is already watching for the next crack or the next breakthrough. And when it comes, you already know where the conversation will land. Because stories like this never really end. They just wait for the next moment to resurface. If you're still here, that tells me one thing. You already know this story isn't finished. Moments like Chrissy and Rock stepping back into boxing training don't wrap up neatly with a bow. They simmer. The internet doesn't move on. It just pretends to until the next clip, the next headline, or the next argument pulls everything back into the spotlight. And when that happens, you'll want to be ahead of the noise, not catching up late in the comments, acting surprised. This is where the real breakdowns happen without filters and without fake outrage. Now, don't just sit there nodding like you agree, interact, smash that like button like it owes you money, because every click tells the algorithm we're not here for watered-down takes. Drop a comment and tell me if you think this is the start of a real transformation or just another chapter. The internet is waiting to twist. There are no wrong answers here, only loud opinions, and we want all of them. The comment section is where the real fight happens. And if you haven't subscribed yet, fix that immediately. Subscribing is how you make sure you don't miss the next twist when it drops out of nowhere and everybody suddenly acts brand new. This channel lives where chaos, culture, and controversy collide. And trust me, scandals don't take days off. We break stories, expose narratives, and call out the nonsense before it gets rewritten. Because while the internet refreshes and forgets, we keep receipts. So stay locked in, stay vocal, and stay ready. This is VIP Prave, where drama doesn't knock, it kicks the door.